What if you could literally talk your way into a different life? Well, today we're going to dig into a really fascinating idea based on the teachings of Bishop David Oyedepo that argues you can do just that. Let's see how it's supposed to work.
Okay, so the whole thing kicks off with this. Just, wow, what a statement. And get this, it's not about thinking your way out of trouble, or even just working your way out. The core idea here is that the road to real change actually starts with your mouth.
So how is that supposed to work? Like, what's the actual connection here? How does saying something out loud actually change what you experience? Let's get into the framework this viewpoint lays out.
All right, so the first big piece of this puzzle is what the source calls a faith that speaks. And the idea is pretty simple. Faith isn't something you just keep bottled up inside. For it to actually do anything, you've got to let it out. It has to be vocal.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. The source makes a really bold point. Just doing good things, like being a generous person, isn't the whole picture. It's like this. Your actions are like planting seeds, right? But your words are the water. Without speaking your faith out loud, those seeds can just kind of wither away.
Okay, so if speaking is the key, how do you actually do it? And we're not just talking about some vague positive thinking here. No, the source lays out a super specific two-step procedure to make your faith actually, well, deliver.
And here it is, the whole formula, right here. So, step one, that's all internal. You've got to truly believe it in your heart. But, and this is the key part, that belief just sits there, it's dormant, until you hit step two. You have to say it out loud. Belief is the engine, but your words, they're the ignition key. You need both to get anywhere.
This right here is pretty much the fundamental law that makes this whole thing work. The argument is super direct. Your words aren't just describing your reality, they're literally building it, moment by moment.
Okay, which brings us to the next big idea. Bold words, open results. Because you see, it's not just that you're talking. It's how you're talking that makes all the difference. There's a huge contrast between the kind of speech that builds you up and the kind that, well, tears you down.
So just look at this. On the left, you've got these super bold, absolute statements. I can never be sick. Things are turning for me. But then look at the other side. Things are really bad. This can happen to anybody. The source is basically saying that this kind of negative talk, even if it feels like you're just being realistic, is actually a form of self-sabotage. You're accidentally creating the very things you're complaining about.
And man, this next quote just hits it home. Boldness isn't optional here. It's a requirement. The whole idea is that if you're kind of wishy-washy about it, if you whisper it, it's just not going to work. You have to speak with total conviction for those words to turn into what the source calls open testimonies.
All right, so that's the theory, but what about in real life? Does this stuff actually work? Well, this next part moves us from theory to practice, from sickness to success. We're going to look at some pretty powerful personal stories from the source that show how this is all supposed to play out in some really high-stakes moments.
Okay, let's dive into the first one. So picture this. The speaker is at the doctor's office, and the doctor comes back with some bad news, a high blood pressure diagnosis.
But here's the thing. Instead of just accepting it, the immediate reaction was this powerful verbal rejection. This is like a textbook example of the whole principle in action. You're faced with a negative reality, and you immediately counter it with a bold, faith-filled statement, right then and there.
So, what happened? Well, the speaker claims that the condition completely disappeared that same day. No medication needed, and the credit for this? It goes straight to that verbal declaration. As the speaker puts it, my mouth delivered me. My faith made me whole.
And it's not just about personal health either. This same idea is applied to some absolutely massive projects. For example, the source points to building a whole university campus, get this, in less than 7 months. I mean, that's just an incredible timeline, and it's attributed to the hand of God, which was activated by that same principle we've been talking about, just consistent, bold declarations of faith.
All right, let's pull all these threads together now. This final section really boils everything down to one core idea, and that is the power of the tongue. This is basically the master key, the philosophy that runs this whole system.
And this slide just lays it all out. Think of it like this. Your tongue is the steering wheel for your entire life. You can use it to steer yourself towards success, or you can just let go of the wheel and let negative talk steer you right into trouble. So the message here is really about taking control. Don't just let life happen to you. Direct it with what you say.
And this is really the bottom line.
the ultimate principle that holds all of this up. I mean, the stakes couldn't be higher, right? According to this way of thinking, your words literally hold the power of life and death, of success and failure, of poverty and prosperity.
So that brings us to the big question that this whole idea leaves us with. We've just walked through one really powerful perspective on this, and it really makes you think, doesn't it? What really is the connection between what we say every day and the life we actually end up living?